For the first time since 1997, the Russian Navy's nuclear-powered battlecruiser, the Admiral Nakhimov, has returned to the water and begun moving under her own power. The battlecruiser has finally gone on sea trials in the middle of August 2025, following her refit. This event marks the culmination of one of the most ambitious and prolonged surface combatant modernization programs in modern naval history. The 28,000-ton ship, part of the Soviet-era Kirov class, known in Russia as the Project 1144.2 Orlan, has been under extensive reconstruction for a long time, reflecting both the challenges of refurbishing nuclear-powered vessels and the Russian Navy's strategic intent to preserve the world's largest and most heavily armed surface warships. With her return, the Admiral Nakhimov is expected to become the flagship of the Northern Fleet, superseding her sister ship, the Pyotr Veliky, and signaling a renewed commitment by Moscow to maintain a credible blue water surface fleet, despite the economic and operational constraints of the post-Soviet economy. Laid down in Leningrad in 1983 and launched in 1986 under the name Kalinin, the ship was renamed the Admiral Nakhimov in 1992 to honor the 19th century Russian naval hero, Pavel Stepanovich Nakhimov. She joined the Northern Fleet in 1988, but was effectively mothballed in 1997 after only a brief operational career in the waning years of the Cold War in the Soviet Navy. For decades, the vessel lay in dry dock at the Sevmash shipyard in Severodvinsk, in Russia, a monument to the Soviet naval ambition and simultaneously the difficulties faced by the post-Soviet Russia in maintaining such enormous warships. Work on the Admiral Nakhimov only began in earnest in 2014, with an initial projected completion date of 2018. As is often the case with large complex refurbishment projects, repeated delays pushed the target's completion out first to 2020, and then 2021, and then all the way to 2024, and I guess now finally to August 2025. The reasons for these delays are multiple. The technical challenges of modernizing a 40-year-old nuclear-powered ship, and the integration of entirely new weapons and sensor systems into the old ship hull, and the chronic limitations in Russian shipyards' shipbuilding capacity and funding by the Russian state. Central to the modernization effort is a complete reconfiguration of the ship's missile systems. The original Kirov-class layout featured 20 P-700 Granite anti-ship missile launchers. These are massive weapons optimized to defeat high-value targets such as NATO aircraft carriers, and obviously these include the US Navy's premier supercarriers. These missiles remain powerful, of course, but their size and relatively antiquated guidance systems make them less flexible compared to modern systems. What happens is that one Granite missile within a salvo of missiles always has to fly very high, because it has to search ahead using its own onboard radar to find the target and then pass on that information to the other Granite missiles that are flying low. This makes the high-flying Pickett Granite missile easy to pick up with radar, providing the target with more reaction time compared to a salvo of entirely sea-skimming, low-flying missiles. The upgrade replaces the Granite with a Universal Vertical Launch System, or VLS, comprising of 174 cells. Of these, 78 are intended for modern cruise and anti-ship missiles, including the subsonic Caliber, the supersonic Oniks, and the hypersonic Zircon missile. The remaining 96 cells are dedicated to surface-to-air missiles, which are expected to be drawn from the state-of-the-art navalized S-400-based interceptors. Some analysts suggested that it is more likely to be the navalized S-300 FM air defense system, but Most Russian sources believe that the S-400 is more likely over the older S-300. Whatever the type of SAM, when fully operational, this configuration will allow the Admiral Nakhimov to carry way more missiles than any other surface combatant or indeed guided missile attack submarines in the world, surpassing even the US Navy's Ticonderoga-class cruisers and China's Type 055 large destroyers. The air defense capabilities of the upgraded Nakhimov are particularly noteworthy. If it is the case that the ship uses a navalized S-400 system with 96 launchers, the ship would gain an engagement envelope extending up to 400 kilometers from the ship. This represents a step change over the older S-300F system, which had a much more limited range of around 90 kilometers. In addition to the S-400, the ship is expected to carry a layered, close-in defense suite, including 8 Panzer M system, each combining gun and missile elements for rapid reaction to threat at short ranges. Although at this point, only 6 of the 8 Panzer M Seawers that have been slated to go on the ship have been installed so far. While the exact operational status of all these weapons and systems has yet to be fully verified, the potential firepower of the upgraded Admiral Nakhimov represents a significant enhancement not only for the ship itself, but also for the fleet formation in which it operates, providing a wide area air defense umbrella. One of the most strategically significant roles of the Admiral Nakhimov is to act as a protective shield for Russian ballistic missile submarines, or SSBN, particularly in the so-called Arctic Bastion. The Russian Northern Fleet's strategic nuclear deterrence relies heavily on the survivability of its Bore and Delta IV class SSBNs, which are deployed in northern waters, often beneath Arctic ice. This area of water is therefore known informally as the Arctic Bastion for Russian ballistic missile submarines. A critical vulnerability for any SSBN is the threats posed by anti-submarine warfare aircraft and the associated sensor networks. These aircraft rely on extensive air coverage to locate and track submarines, including ballistic missile submarines. By fielding the Nakhimov as a heavily armed air defense cruiser, the Russian Navy can exert a degree of control over the airspace above the Arctic Bastion, using the ship's S-400 interceptors and layered defenses to deter or neutralize NATO maritime patrol aircraft and potentially anti-submarine helicopters. In this way, the Kirov-class cruiser indirectly enhances the credibility of Russia's undersea nuclear deterrence, ensuring that its SSBNs can operate with reduced risk of detection, thereby maintaining the integrity of the second strike capability that underpins nuclear deterrence. From a propulsion perspective, the Kirov class remains unique. The combination of 2 nuclear reactors with steam turbines allows the ship to maintain speeds of up to 31 knots for extended periods. The nuclear machinery is arranged in a compartmentalized system, with 2 reactors feeding steam to 2 steam turbines and supplemented by conventional oil-fired boilers as a redundancy measure. This arrangement allows the vessel to sustain prolonged operations in the Arctic and other remote theaters, where resupply and maintenance opportunities are limited. While the nuclear propulsion system increases operational and maintenance cost, it also affords a strategic mobility that a conventionally powered cruiser cannot really match. The modernization program extends beyond missile systems to include sensors and command and control infrastructure. The original 130mm AK-130 main gun has been replaced by the more modern and the more capable AK-192M, while radar, fire control systems, and electronic warfare suites are being upgraded to integrate with the new missile systems. Anti-submarine warfare capabilities are enhanced through the use of the Ka-27 anti-submarine helicopter, capable of over-the-horizon targeting for the ship's anti-ship and land attack missile systems, and of course using its own sonar buoys and anti-submarine torpedoes to attack submarines. The ship also has the newer and more versatile Packet-NK torpedo system, which can both attack enemy submarines and also act as an anti-torpedo interceptor that targets incoming torpedoes from the submarines. Unlike the US Navy or the Chinese Navy, both of which with large numbers of very capable cruisers and large surface combatants, the Russian Navy is, to be honest, behind in the number of highly capable surface combatants. So it is very important to make each one of these surface warships count. It is important for the Russian Navy to make full use of each major surface combatants that they possess currently. The modernization of the Nakhimov has been neither linear nor assured. In the immediate post-Soviet period, the collapse of funding means that 3 out of the 5 Kirov-class hulls were scrapped, leaving only the Pyotr Veliky and the Admiral Nakhimov in reserve. The decision to modernize the Nakhimov reflects both the sunk cost of the hull and a pragmatic response to the limitations of the Russian shipbuilding industry, which has struggled to build new large surface combatants since the 1990s. In this sense, the program is just as much about maintaining capability as it is about projecting prestige. Nevertheless, the refits demonstrate the continued willingness of Russia to invest heavily in strategic symbols of power, and also in vessels capable of shaping regional maritime security, particularly in the Arctic and the North Sea. Now, turning to the Kirov class more broadly, these ships represent the apex of Soviet surface combatant design. At 28,000 tons and 252 meters in length, they are among the largest non-carrier warships ever constructed after the Second World War, comparable in displacement to the dreadnought battleships of the early 20th century. Unlike traditional battlecruisers, the Kirov class was designed with a multi-domain mission in mind that gradually evolved over time. Originally conceived as a large anti-submarine platform intended to neutralize US ballistic missile submarines with anti-submarine missiles, the Kirov class quickly assumed a broader strike role, incorporating formidable anti-ship missile capabilities aimed at US and NATO carrier strike groups, and integrating area air defense systems to protect both themselves and accompanying vessels. The development of the Kirov occurred against a backdrop of a broader technological shift within the Soviet Navy in the late Cold War period. The introduction of gas turbine-powered vessels, such as the Slava-class cruiser, emphasized speed and ocean-going capabilities, but the Kirovs were intended as true blue-water platforms, capable of sustaining high-intensity combat over extended periods. Admiral Sergei Gorshkov, the architect of the Soviet Navy's post-war expansion, championed the class as a way to challenge Western sea control directly, even though many within the Soviet naval staff viewed the resources devoted to such massive surface units as disproportionate relative to their perceived strategic returns. Nonetheless, the Kirovs embodied the Soviets' vision of a blue-water navy, capable of projecting power far beyond the home fleet, particularly when integrated with projected aircraft carrier assets, most of which were never completed. Operationally, the remaining Kirov-class ships have played largely symbolic roles since the end of the Cold War, serving as flagship and as instruments of naval diplomacy rather than active combatants. The Pyotr Veliky, for example, has conducted extended cruises to the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, and the Indian Ocean, demonstrating Russia's continued capacity for global naval presence. These deployments, while limited in kinetic impact, have reinforced Moscow's ability to signal resolve and influence international audiences, particularly in contested or strategic regions. The return of the Admiral Nakhimov promises to continue this capability with an even more formidable arsenal. The potential retirement of the Pyotr Veliky following the Nakhimov's return to service will reduce and concentrate the Kirov class's capabilities into a single flagship, reinforcing the Northern Fleet's operational gravity within the overall Russian Navy. In conclusion, the Admiral Nakhimov represents the continuity of Russian naval power. Its return to sea trials after decades of inactivity reflects the strategic importance Moscow places on maintaining capable, independent, and survivable surface combatants, in a certain degree of contrast to its likely retirement of the aircraft carrier, the Admiral Kuznetsov. While the Nakhimov's actual combat effectiveness will depend on the successful integration and operation of the new missile systems, sensor and command systems, the ship's potential to serve as a mobile air defense bastion in the Arctic and beyond means that it remains valuable to the Northern Fleet. The Kirov class embodies the Soviet ambition of projecting naval power across the globe, although nowadays this has been tempered by the practical realities of post-Soviet resource constraints in Russia. As a combination of missile arsenal, defensive capability, and strategic value, the upgraded Kirovs is one of the most formidable surface warships in the world today. Now, I understand that as a result of the invasion of Ukraine, many people are highly critical of the Russian government. My video covers only the Kirov class. It is meant to be an objective look at the upgraded Admiral Nakhimov and nothing further. I hope you understand that. See you next time.